Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Now I've got to start off by saying that Greg is a bit of a champion because he has flown in from Europe today, specifically to be here for us tonight. Is that right?
Well, I did arrive at 6 o'clock this morning, and
Still awake? So that's
usually I can say unfiltered / borderline inappropriate stuff, so hopefully I can keep it under control because I've just been travelling for about 40 hours. But yeah, so it could be interesting. But yeah, I feel like I actually got about 3 hours of sleep today in the hotel, so I'm alright.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, we're going to start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about your background. So we heard about what you studied, but where did you grow up? What was your first job? How did it start?
Yeah, so I just grew up in Toowoomba, and just pretty normal sort of middle class kind of upbringing, just playing cricket with my brother out the backyard and that sort of stuff, and hitting golf balls over the top of suburbia and listening to see what had happened. Just sort of bad behaviour every sort of 12-year-old kid does. Yeah, and then I went to school at Toowoomba Grammar, and that was actually a lot of fun, but I was probably also in that sort of disruptive in that sort of context as well a little bit. I was probably lucky that I got into university to do something decent. I just did international business. And then after that I did commerce, just with a double economics major. Probably the biggest takeaways of that were just taking a lot of information and putting it in one place to make a compelling case. So if you're writing pitches or that sort of thing, I think it's useful. So that was probably really the best thing I got out of that. But yeah, no, school was a lot of fun, and university was a lot of fun as well, actually. But yeah, I did actually pull my head in and work hard at university because I hadn't done any business stuff when I was at high school, and I thought, all right, I better get into it here. So I actually, I didn't really drink, and I was just running and exercising and being pretty diligent and handing all my stuff in on time, I've got to say. And then I think towards the end, everybody else was starting to go off, and you were sort of trained to try to get a job for like a multinational company. And I was a runner and I got injured, so I thought, I'll try and do triathlons, even though a lot of dicks kind of did triathlons. But then I was pretty good at it, and so then I was trying to be professional on and off the dole. Hanging out at the swimming pool at UQ eating killer pythons and sleeping during the day, but I was like, all right, but not good enough, and I never really made money out of it. So I think it's like a soft employment environment over in the UK, so a lot of people go over there, and I went over there even though I was 2 years out of university, I think, and I kind of bullshitted my way into an accounting sort of job. It was really glorified data entry. That was for a telecommunications company, and then I did another role like that in Edinburgh for a few months, and then I went back and did another stint at a telecommunications company in Ireland, and it was right in the south of Ireland. That's where I met Shane, my business partner, with whom I've done this plus the business.
So you started off with Shane, started in the recruitment space.
Yeah, so my very first job was here in Brisbane, just like selling. There was an insurance broker, and they used to send me out to do like life and income protection insurance, and I was 22 or 23, and I think it was just great experience just to get out and meet a total range of people and just get raw sales experience. So I just think that's something that just gets overlooked, is that real people and sales experience, not in a hard sell point of view, but just finding out what makes people tick a bit and what turns them off and all that sort of stuff. And that was great experience, actually. And then, yeah, to your question there, there was like a telecommunications bubble, and I met Shane, and we were just talking about starting businesses on the same sort of wavelength, and we were both just getting paid too much. I was just a glorified data entry guy, really. But he's an actual accountant. He was a qualified accountant, and we were just kicking around in Corky Island, and then my brother was also over there as well at the time, and he had an occupational therapist girlfriend, and she said, "Oh, Ireland's growing, we need health professionals." So we put about 5,000 euros each into this internet health recruiting thing, and we didn't know anything about the internet or health or recruiting, and we didn't make any money at all, not 1 cent for a year. And then because Shane's mother happened to be a pharmacist, and they were building suburbs in Ireland, you had to have a pharmacist in every pharmacy in every new suburb. So we formed relationships with Australian and New Zealand pharmacy bodies, because you had to be educated in either Australia, New Zealand or Ireland. Every time you placed one, you'd make about 10 grand, because the salaries were getting bid up because these guys were so short in supply, and so they were on about 100 grand. And you did the whole immigration and foreign qualification and all that sort of stuff. And if we did 5 or 6 of those a month, and there were 3 of us, we thought that was pretty cool. But we actually didn't care at all about what we were actually doing. It was just an opportunity, and we took it. And eventually we were super lucky to just sell it to a UK recruiter. Just not for that much, like maybe a couple of 100 grand each when we were, which is all right, I guess. We were 28 or something, it was 29. So, and we're sort of sick of being in Ireland anyway. With Shane, not so much because he is Irish, but yeah. So that was that. But I think what we did learn is we learned a bit about software development, the internet, and just what the possibilities were and what the leverage was there. So it was a worthwhile teeth cutting experience for us.
Yeah, right. And then so you came back to Australia, had a bit of cash, I suppose, at that stage.
Yeah, we had a little bit. I bought 2 properties right at the end of the property boom, just because I was hyperactive and I didn't want to just do nothing. And one of them was okay. They were just crappy renovating properties up in Nimble. And the second one, I was arrogant enough. Shane and I bought a property together on a 45-degree angle that bordered onto the Nimble Council swimming pool. And we're trying to do like subdivide it, and of course it went badly. So we probably lost about 50 grand each because the holding period was so long, because it's not that easy to knock down council swimming pool fences and pipe all the way through there. And that was really a bit of a lesson in arrogance and hubris, because for 15 bucks I could have got a water chart and saved all that hassle. It's just think, sold the business, we're pretty cool. And so I reckon it's just really good to get a kick up the arse when you think you're flying a bit high, and it wasn't even that high at all in hindsight. So and then you'll always be inclined to look in the rear view mirror, I think, in whatever you do after that, just so you're not sort of getting out of check, which in some ways I'd be inclined to do, I guess. But yeah, right. So that was good.
We got to 2005, and you and Shane then started Cash Doctors.
Yeah, Shane just came over for a holiday, really. We were living in Paddington, and we had a pool table, and we were playing pool and just doing nothing, and not even knowing what to do. And we probably between that and burned through a bit of our money. And we're just talking about annoying our parents and asking them for money all the time. Like, Mum, I've got this raise on, I'm doing this, can I have 200 bucks, blah, blah, blah. What you didn't pay the last 10 times off that happened. And we've both been in credit card debt as well, because you buy a shirt and then buy breakfast, and you do that for 6 months, and suddenly it's like, 10 grand. And then the other option is just crappy loan sharky options, and they weren't even really in the consideration set for someone who's working. So we're trying to. It just really started off like that. I mean, we we actually had a shop front to start with, even though we had an internet business before. Like the penny didn't even drop there.
And this was because the other players in the market had a shop front?
Yeah, there was a few. There were a couple of players in the market that had a shop front, but probably after about 6 months, we realised that the guys who were kicking around at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they just want to talk, they don't pay you back. And then we had always wanted it to be, and we just had about 5 rules, and it would just often be down to, do you reckon they're good for it? So, and we're probably a bit trusting in some ways and almost naive in some ways, and it's amazing that we kind of got past that. So, but the other rules that were skeleton rules kind of worked to some extent. So,
can I ask at this point, when you had the shop front, did you have a website as well?
Yeah, we did have a website.
Can you tell me a little bit about that website process?
Yeah.
I thought this was quite interesting how you approached that. You're a bit of a details man, I understand, so you weren't going to launch something too green?
No, we had a couple of websites, and I think that's where the penny started to drop, with the guys who came through the web versus the guys who came through physically through the shop, and that's where you can really see that these guys will pay so much better than these guys. So, yeah, we put a pretty basic website and application form together, and at the time we thought it was great, but obviously now when you go back in the Wayback Machine or something, you look at it like...
But you went overseas to get that built, is that right?
Oh, that was the Nimble one.
The next
yeah,
one?
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
Yeah, because back at the time we just had... I was friends with a musician, and he had a mate who was in the band, and he did a bit of web monkey work. He's an untrained web software developer, and he just knocked this web... That's camp. There are 2 Nimble guys here. So he built this website, and it looked okay, I suppose. But yeah, a few years later, we'll probably get that.
Yeah, we'll cover that in a minute then. All right, so you had your website up. Were you making any money?
No, we weren't really making any money, but we weren't losing any either, because our expense was super low. So this was the time when, between going in and out of the property, and then we decided to ditch the shop front and go into office only, online only. And so we actually had no money, because it's probably over a year since we sold the other business, almost 2. So this is when we just needed to make a few $100 a week to live on. This when we were both mowing lawns. So we moved to the Gold Coast because there was a third business partner who had Subway shops and that sort of stuff, and he knew the street front sort of space pretty well, but then he wasn't so useful so much when you go into online only. So we had to buy him out, and that was extra bit of money that we need to come up with as well. Otherwise it would have been actually 25 and 50 for him at the time. So that was very lucky, and we moved to the Gold Coast, and then, if you wake up at 5 o'clock, mow 14 lawns, rev the crap out of the lawnmower and jog, you don't do a great job. You could make $300 or $400 in a day, and one of us would do that 1 day a week. So that was, and we did that actually for well over a year, almost 2 years, so it wasn't just a couple of months.
So you said you were doing that right up until you had quite a few staff?
Yeah, we were doing that probably till 20 staff really, because we really just didn't want to take money out of the business. We were just trying to do whatever we could to get it up and running once we could see the possibilities with it really. So yeah, I don't know, I think it was great. The best thing is that, and I'll probably talk to this a little bit, is that it actually put us right in the shoes of the customer, because we were like broke, except we wouldn't have got loans, we didn't have a job. So we weren't eligible ourselves. But it was, I think, but it just, because we weren't finance guys as we weren't health recruiting guys either, so we're actually thinking, all right, if I was getting a loan here, what would piss me off? What would I want? What could make it easier? And I think if some people are ever put off by, I've got no experience in that, I can't start a business in that, I reckon that's bullshit. I'd actually say it's a plus a lot of times. That you're actually just hitting it really from customers' perspective, I think is really, really valuable actually. And I think that was good, and I think that was also something from which you should sort of anchor going forward. Right, what's the problem I'm trying to solve, and what are we trying to do for the customer? Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the questions that's been submitted was, what were the key factors which gained Nimble, or Cash Doctors I suppose still at this stage, its initial traction? Like at what point did you then go, okay, this is going to work?
Yeah, I guess we were just lucky that I think, had a very good digital marketing guy in our midst, and we grew on paid and organic search. Really, that was it for the first few years. Like there weren't apps then. This is 2007 or 8 or something. So we're starting to get a decent amount of volume, and it's just growing nice in a nice sort of linear, gentle kind of way. Because we didn't have any backing, because we had 50 grand each we put in. We raised another 100 1 year in, so it was just 200 grand of seed capital. And like I'm a big fan of bootstrapping because it makes you watch your numbers, and it's just good discipline and resourcefulness instead of falling ass back on a 5 grand coffee machine and $2 million worth of seed funding, and it just sets all the wrong behaviours up front sometimes, So I think we've sort of tried to maintain that discipline, because if we made a loss for 3 months, we were gone. So we just couldn't have cash burn. So I think that was pretty valuable. But I guess there was just a point where you're starting to see these sort of jumps in the volume, and actually you make product improvements, because we're always just trying to get it better and better and better. All right, we don't want to ring up the payroll officer, we want to, how can we not do that and just have it more automated? How can we make it faster? And then every time you improve the product, it wasn't just the marketing, it was a combination of the product and the marketing, making these little hops, which obviously in turn leads to good experience and advocacy and returning business, which I think doesn't matter whether you're mowing lawns or what technology you've got or what business you're doing. It's just good product, customer advocacy, and good customer experience is just totally what it always distills down to, and technology is just like a conduit, really.
So that initial 200k seed capital took you through then up until like 6 or 7 years in?
Yeah.
Is that right? 85 staff?
Yeah, so we have the lending money, which was only for lending, and then we just had that 200 grand. So as Lisa said, it probably we did a lot on a little, I suppose. We went to 86 staff, and 6 or 7 years in on 200 grand of seed capital, which so you sort of got to be a details man.
Yeah. And then how and when did you raise further funds? So Cash Doctors at that stage.
Yeah, that's right. So I think there's kind of 3 phases of raising capital. I guess it differs on the context, but there was that total bootstrap period for a few years where you just on that little bit of seed capital, and that's really where you build the platform, and build the product, and develop the product. And then after that, we did iterative cap raises that were fairly small as the valuation increased, and that meant we didn't really care about dilution. But looking back, I think it's good that we didn't get too diluted. We had a fragmented shareholder base then, because we now have over 50 shareholders. So we didn't just have one big shareholder that had a lot of influence early on. So then we could stick to our guns with the good experience and really wanting, I believe sort of that the flow of money shouldn't interfere with the flow of life, So we didn't have anyone trying to just say, we want to exit in 2 years, let's go chase this revenue stream, let's do that, and all that. So I think that was good. Especially now we're 10 years in, and there is a little bit of influence, in the other way that you're starting to see and you have to start to manage. So I think it's good that we still had control, like a very small board to limit the scope of misalignment and a fragmented shareholder base and iterative cap raises. And then you really, I think you always have to think, all right, if there is misalignment, if maybe some things do get a bit woolly, what's my fallback so that I can keep doing cool work and not doing lame crap, and I think really you have to be super clear about what you're setting out to achieve, fully anchor to it, and make sure that any investors are on that same program, I probably can't emphasise that one enough, really. Yeah.
Okay. And at that point you rebranded as well, is that right?
Yeah, so the second equity phase after the bootstrapping is I build a platform, build a product. Now let's kind of go into more of an acquisition mode, I guess. And I think another thing is you really want to try to get a grip on lifetime value and acquisition cost as early as you possibly can, because then you can know how you can confidently scale when if you're buying media, for example, instead of just putting up a billboard at the cricket and thinking you're cool and crossing your fingers or some shit. Like you can actually work it. You can work it out a lot more than you think. So you're in that creation phase, then your bootstrapping phase, then you're in a more of an acquisition phase. And I think the third, because we were sort of called cash doctors, which put us back in the category that we wanted to disrupt, so it didn't make sense for us to be called that anymore. So Nimble kind of characterised what we want for the customer, not to be bogged down in debt or overwhelmed in debt. And internally, Nimble, as in, we do cool work, have cool ideas, execute them. And so that was a great idea to rebrand, and it wasn't mine. That was Joanne sort of pushed me into that, because back in the day I thought, cash dog is great, so I was wedded to that for a while, but I was wrong on that one. Absolutely, and we're lucky to get that domain name. And the third phase, I think, which we missed a bit, is you'll then have an opportunity to raise, like if you're going there and you're going pretty good, maybe you've raised a few million or something, and that's getting traction is where you can, in our case, and I think in a lot of cases, go overseas and look for that 5, 10, 20 plus $50 million check to really kick it out of the park. And you might think you're cute and not diluting too much and having a fragmented shareholder base, but there is a point where you need to, even if you don't really need the money, you don't need that much, you should get it when the valuation and the investor climate is favourable, and just take it even if you don't need it. And I think that's one thing we didn't do as well. So now we're trying to raise in a less favourable environment at the moment, because there's a cool vision at the moment to basically be like, all right, go from just doing small loans to, all right, well, why bank when you can Nimble it? Like, screw banking, let's have a few apps where you can do 80% of everything you want to do with the bank, and you can never go to a bank. But yeah, if we had like 50 mil up our sleeve right now, we could just go for it. But now we're just having to navigate through a few months of trying to put the foundations down for that.
Yeah. Just, I suppose, when we're at this stage, you mentioned that you formed a board and you've made some strong relationships that helped with that growth as well. Can you tell us a bit about those? There's a few ones early on.
Yeah, so there was the guy who was largely responsible for What If, was a shareholder and kind of he's like a mentor really for me. He's just a couple of years old.
Which is interesting because our speaker last month, Stephen Phillips, also had a strong relationship with Graham Wood, so it's a message in this for everyone here today.
Yeah, this was Sam Friend, who was the sort of operations guy and set it up over in London. And his younger brother was our third business partner in Ireland, so that's kind of how that connection happened. And then he knew some of the guys from iSelect, and they were helpful in the connection with the CFO that we have now, and very good on identifying acquisition cost and what's the lifetime value of the customer, and then if you discount that to future value, then how much money do you need to make out of a certain amount of time, and how fast to accelerate. I think they were helpful with media buying because they buy an absolute shitload of media. We were just starting out, so we were able to kind of piggyback their media buy, which otherwise we would have just been a snot-nosed, small volume buyer trying to make our way through and buy direct. I think another thing is, if you're going into TV, trying to, by the way, buying direct and not using the agency, I reckon is fantastic, because the agency aren't a tenth as analytical about it, plus they don't care. And like everyone was going, oh, I don't buy TV direct, but it actually was good, but at the same time we probably couldn't have done it without the tutelage of isolating their media buys, so that was good too. So we spent a bit of time getting to know the couple of guys on the appointed board. It was four members big, and now it's 5 members big, so it's still pretty small. But yeah, I wouldn't rush into it again. Make sure you get people that have that shared vision. I just reckon it's really important, because people can be cool when it's all going cool, and even if things start just going a bit sideways, then just behaviours can change a little bit, and it's hard to predict. But if they're really off in the right direction, then you're going to do a bit of this, and that's natural. But if you're not going to be doing this, so don't just hop straight on up for the cash and think, oh great, we can raise money. Like, really make sure the relationships and sort of shared visions on track.
Great. So around that time you brought in a CEO as well?
Yeah, a little bit after that.
Yeah, and how was that decision and process for you? I mean, it's a big change for a business.
Yeah, I guess.
Founders and business.
I guess Shane and I are, we're not managers really, and I'm kind of really product marketing kind of guy, and Shane's pretty good that way as well. So I think we just reached a point where it's like, there's like compliance and financial management and debt, and you've got to deal with shareholders and all that sort of stuff, and it's not really what we like or are good at. So we thought that we'd sort of add some value or someone, and we also thought of developing the management talent so that the guys would stay and that sort of stuff. And so that was the thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Now, payday lenders in the UK have been heavily criticised for their treatment of vulnerable people. What's your perspective, and how do you differ or fit in, or what role do you play in that?
Yeah, I guess for us, we looked at the shitty options that were around at the time, and that was what we set out to disrupt. So there's one aspect where you can just grab your phone and get a loan, and we're looking at your phone service provider among all sorts of weird data, and can work out whether you're good for it or not, as opposed to Shane and I just having a conversation. And then there's a distribution and convenience aspect, but really it's the whole thing of, all right, we don't want people to borrow $500 and it becomes $5,000 and all those sort of things that sort of used to happen in Australia, but it's pretty much regulated out now and had happened in the UK. A big part of that is, who do you lend to? And then for us, that's only 20% of people. So it's not that easy to get a loan, really. It's easy as in it's convenient, but it's not easy eligibility-wise. How much can they afford? So there's a whole lot of, especially now that some good stuff we can do with bank statements, there's a whole lot of data you can use to understand, whether someone can afford that and how much they can afford. And so you're not just lending to willy-nilly, and in the States as well, just lending to everybody, writing off a shitload and just trying to make a lot of money and not giving a shit, right? Trying to do it in a, really sustainable, ethical way, because again, otherwise how you get that advocacy and repeat business, unless you're just giving people a good experience. And I think the price thing's another thing that always comes into it. Like with a loan under $500 or $1,000, you've sort of got to pay about 20% on top. Otherwise, you can't just charge like a 10% APR on a $500 loan. Otherwise, well, it was 12% APR, and then that's about 1% a month, so that's $5, so it's about $3.50 on a $500 loan that you make, that goes for about a month, and you just, economically you can't do that when you've got your compliance, your acquisition costs, da-da-da-da-da-da. So it's just because the loans are small and they don't have many zeros on the end and they only go for a few weeks. That's kind of why you have to price it at about 20 on top and not a low APR. So, I mean, that's okay. Guys in the UK got, to my earlier point, they were fueled by an absolute shitload, this is a crowd called Wonga, of VC capital. And so they were just trying to max it out and push as much business through as fast as possible for to list it on the NASDAQ and then make a massive windfall. So they're just lending everything to students and pensioners, and just they had a pretty good business model in some ways, and they just got greedy and it's the wrong value set, and then gets ugly.
So a lot about what you're saying here is about the value set and keeping your eye on the customer needs and providing that service to them.
Yeah.
Great. So you've used the term disruptive quite a bit in terms of how you describe your business. Aside from the interface, how you access Nimble, I suppose, what other components do you consider to be disruptive in that context?
I think it's just as simple as just that with eWig, what you see is what you get. I can see exactly what I'm borrowing, how much my fees are, what are the payment schedule. It's super easy. Like if you try and think of how you're going to understand how a credit card works, like you can't do that. Like we're contemplating a revolving type product soon, but we want it to be as hardly anything like a credit card, but still be a revolving product. So it would have a high minimum balance, a high minimum monthly payment that automatically comes out, and so there's no discretion loaded on you because credit cards kind of make money when your behaviour is sloppy. So it's it's probably trying to address the pain points really. So it's transparency, user experience. There's definitely doing things with data that banks definitely aren't doing. Just getting it as tight and simple, so everything's just a few taps on your device, you're done, pay back in a few weeks, never need a scan, who cares? And not just you see the traditional finance industry like grabbing your head under the water and just like keeping you there and just milking you until like you're just as they've got as much out of you as you can, and just I don't know, just a different attitude really. Okay.
You've mentioned a few interesting ways of analysing the loan applications, so phone carriers, what's the other one there?
We capitalise, how
bank statements, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
Have you used social media profiles as a way of analysing applications? Or any data around,
Yeah, we know that you can, but in Australia it's a bit tricky because of privacy. Because people can opt into it, but some of the more interesting stuff is around the net. If there's somebody, then they know somebody who's going to pay back, etc., etc. So we probably will introduce social, and we've looked at it, and other people using it. But yeah, like at the moment, our defaults are less than 5% with the data that we do have. So.
Great.
So yeah, but no, yeah, social will happen. It's just what can and can't you use. And if you put a big obstacle at the start of the funnel, it's like, oh great, we're not going to post stuff on the profile, but can we look at it because it might help you get a loan or something? That's one of those things where is it going to pay off the conversions and the write-offs? Yeah.
Okay. Question here from someone in the audience. How do you hold a defensible position against global competition with more resources and similar visions like Lending Club?
Yeah. Is Lending Club the example of the question?
Yes.
I suppose, like we're not a marketplace lender, we're a balance sheet lender, so we actually control the whole end-to-end experience, and we make the product, and the person actually borrows the money from us. So we make the full clip on a transaction, as opposed to, I've got $1,000, I lend you $1,000, and intermediary here makes
Yeah.
X
Not
or
a
that.
peer-to-peer
It's
or
not a peer-to-peer model. And I don't really believe that much in peer-to-peer as it is done at the moment. It's a bit of a misnomer because the funds that come into the platforms are always from institutions. It's not like we're hanging out and you're lending me $5,000, because I'm sure that the guys lending the money aren't down at Royal Melbourne Golf Club with XYZ institution hanging out in the locker room, so it's just not really peer-to-peer. And mums and dads who just want to put $20,000 in or something, there's also a bidding mechanism, which actually means that the liquidity kind of gets sucked up by the institutions anyway. Like, what you really want is just put money in, and it's helping someone out on the other side, but an intermediary does all the work, and that's kind of more of a pure peer-to-peer. So they do the transaction and also the underwriting of the data, so mum and dad doesn't have to worry about, am I assessing the risk properly and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if excluding, to answer the question, excluding peer-to-peers, I think a barrier to entry is actually the compliance environment's really, really difficult in Australia. You have to get bank statements digitally and you have to interpret them. So large American players have come in and gone out and a couple of times. That longer player, they tried to come in from the UK, a lot of money, and they went out. So it's actually, that's hard. Then you've actually got to do thousands of test loans, and you've got to get the data, and then you've got to iterate that. So when you've actually been around for a while, and the model gets stronger over time as the data kind of it galvanizes as the sort of machine learning learns off itself again and again over time, and then there's more data. So that in itself is a barrier. I think brand is a barrier as well. Like, I think in our case, like we're due to do a brand refresh now and start positioning more into that quasi-bank territory, so that we're not so squarely like a short-term lender. So yeah, I think they're probably the three: the brand and the platform and the maturity of the platform and the data are probably make it pretty hard for someone else to come in. Creditech, another player, was thinking of coming in, and they retreated, like 950 million company as well.
Okay, don't forget that you can continue to submit questions using the details on the screen if you'd like to contribute this evening before we finish up. So, another question here. Nimble's come under criticism before for lending to people to pay other loans.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? And is that something that happens frequently?
Yeah, it's something that you don't want to happen. And it's very hard for that to happen now. So it could have happened before. There's even a question that says, are you using this to pay off another loan? If the answer is yes, we don't do that now. But sort of when you're trying to do something new, then you are going to have just teething issues along the way, and some stuff like that's going to happen that is not ideal. Because you can't always know exactly what the person is going to do with them, what they're going to do with the money. We always think that 4 to 5% write-off figure is pretty good, because that means that the people who are borrowing, they're paying back, and if they're paying back, they're having a good experience. And in a lot of ways, I don't think someone can really go bankrupt over a $500 or $1,000 loan. Usually it's quite often the other way, where credit cards and personal loan issuers don't do a whole lot, and banks are coming under fire, I think, with mortgages at the moment, as far as what again, they're just sort of doing this, they don't care what someone's capacity to repay a loan. So often if they're in trouble because they've got $70,000 in 3 different credit card debts and a car, and then they can come to us then sometimes, and then is the money a bit to pay off a credit card, or a bit to buy groceries or whatever, or actually, probably 50% of the purpose of loans are more aspirational type things, like just going on holidays for the weekend, or a bit of travel, or that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
One of the questions was, how did you find your very first customer, and where did you get the money from to lend them?
The very first customer system, or I wouldn't be able to remember. Although that has triggered a little item to look at on my to-do list now. Because it was just, we did our millionth loan just a couple of months ago. The money to lend them, we were paying 24% per annum on money that we used to lend to people. And that was just from friends and family. So as the business was growing, 1 minute you're mowing lawns, then we're running it with thinking, oh shit, if volume keeps going this good, in 3 weeks we're going to run out of money. We very nearly ran out of money. You're like ringing up relatives and stuff. And they kind of get it, they trust you because I guess we'd had a successful business together before, so it was totally just a personal relationship thing. And you know, but again, it's just like mum getting pissed off at us borrowing $200, then grandma's getting pissed off because I'm asking her for 10 grand to fuel the bit, you know, so it's kind of same problem.
Okay, and now your focus has been around marketing and growth for the business. I think, you know, many people in the room have probably seen the television campaigns. What's the most effective marketing channel for Nimble these days?
Yeah, I guess TV really worked actually, because a lot of people, you know, for years everyone's like, oh yeah, fragmented media use and no one watches TV anymore and people recording TV and they don't watch the ads anymore. And that is starting to happen more and more, but it did work actually. So, I mean, we wanted to have like an approachable, straightforward, non-cute brand that sort of expressed who we are, and then there's really, we're always testing, okay, we're regional, we're metro, what channels, what time of day, what web activity comes through as a result of these different combinations and these different territories. We're going to have billboard here, no, not here, we're going to have transit here, we're going to have radio, transit, you know, there's all these combinations and you're trying to work out what works so that you can optimise your spend as much as possible, and then you keep doing that. So I think TV's, it's not like it's going to die because it kind of, everybody wants to stand around the water cooler talking about some shit that happened on some show that everybody watches last night, and there's a bit of a community effect as well. But having said that, the audience we probably want is more that metro techie type audience, and I know myself, I don't watch TV, and so that's where it really comes back to good product and advocacy and getting into those. I guess customers increasingly, I think, are going to be acquired through really good content and utility. So you're going to have like a great, like you'll give an advertiser permission to pitch to you if they'll give you, or the utility will give you good content. Like you'll suffer through a 3 or 5 or 10-second ad if you know that there's some good shit happening on the other side of it. Or you'll use an app, and the app's great, an app's got to be really great, but and you'll then let it pitch stuff to you if it's in context with what you're doing and within the context of what the app is. So I think that's kind of more where things are going. But then if that app started hitting you with too much advertising and you get pissed off, then you just disengage with the app and you want to advocate the app. So, you know, for example, I think apart from the line of credit thing, another thing that we're looking at is like a tool that is like, no one, budgeting is shit, no one looks through their bank statements, right? But you know stuff's going on back there and you're like, what's going on? So there's all those, there's typical sort of apps that will tell you direct debit's coming out tomorrow, you know, you have double charges like Bill Guard and that sort of stuff. But what our data scientists can do is predict the future by looking at the past in your bank statements, and we can do that actually better than anyone in the world. And so now we have to put that into like a personal financial management app, and that means that you should be able to voice activate, oh yeah, can I afford these shoes at $200? And it'll look into the next month, it'll know what's going to happen, and it'll just say yes, no, and so all this stuff's possible.
For $100.
Yeah, it should.
Well, there's been quite a few people asking what's next, so I guess
Yeah.
these are the types of things that you're looking at, which is exciting.
No, it's
product development.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess audience expansion through that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. Just should sort of open up different cohorts, I think,
Yeah.
or more of the sort of ones. Because at the moment it's kind of dichotomous. There's a bit more about everybody's employed. You have to have a job to get a loan, but you're either kind of a bit more battler. Living means like getting by, and then there's guys who just make really good money and they just burn through it all, and they just want to keep rolling, and they run out every now and then, and you know. So that's kind of the two.
Great. Well, I've got quite a few more questions here, so thank you everyone for putting them through. Let's see if we can get through a couple more of these before we finish up. Now, I have had a few questions about the bunny.
Yep.
Obviously, people are watching you, right? So, non-cute and the bunny was one of the questions, and the other question was, why not a kangaroo or wallaby? Was the rabbit a choice to allow movement into overseas markets? Or a rabbit's more nimble?
Yeah, well, and now we are getting back to your question from the first 5 minutes about the overseas guys and the website and stuff.
Yeah.
So we had, went over to, I think what Johan did is went and found guys who designed the logo for Facebook and did a bunch of other beautiful work. And they're in New York, and it's like, why not? And we found a couple of times that you can, why limit yourself to Australia? And it's just not that much more expensive to get the very, very best people in the world. Maybe the Aussie dollar's not quite as strong as it was 5 years ago. But
this is for your rebrand.
This is for our rebrand when we went from
everything.
Cash Doctors to Nimble. So these guys flew over and did this beautiful work, and I'm the fastest prick in the world. They did 4 versions, and it was like, boom, and it was with the rabbit, and the rabbit, it's like a jackrabbit, sort of personifies, movement, and it's fast, and it's kind of free, but it's pretty fluffy and it's unthreatening as opposed to a shark at the other end of the food chain. So there's quite a lot of meaning to it actually, and we liked that it had that mechanical aspect because that connotes a degree of transparency, but also a degree of tech as well. So it's not just a slapping a brand on something. It actually did have a lot of meaning to us. So I think that also could translate into overseas. I guess we're thinking about Philippines a little bit, but then going back to earlier when I was talking about raising money, we sort of got to raise money before we do that, but we could do that. And then the second thing was the website. So we went to, when we developed our app again, we went to New York. We found guys who did like Evernote, sat down with like pimple-faced 22-year-old kids in this cool place in the middle of New York. And these guys were amazing and just knocked out. There's a million permutations, like 200 screens, and just went through it again. They're like the best guys in the world, and they were probably 15% cheaper than whoever would have been in Australia at the time. And of course, there's great people. I'm not saying there's not, but just put everything in the consideration set if you can. And that didn't cost an absolute shitload either. I don't know. Might have been 120 grand to do just the front-facing screens. They didn't do the build. Yeah.
And do you feel that the rebrand was instrumental for your growth?
Yeah.
Was that a real turning point for you from that perspective?
Yeah. I think having cash in our name would have created inertia. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the investment appetite in Australia for the level of funds you're trying to raise now?
Probably nil to cool to cooler than lukewarm at best. I just think that we probably raise, and we might raise like five or something out here, but then it's on the valuation and the wavelength. Like I know we were over, I don't know when New York keeps coming up, but I was away for 2 months, and part of it was on the capital raising trail, and we're over there, and you're just having this eye-to-eye fintech conversation with this guy and totally gets it, knows how all the bits connect, no problem, instead of like, and it's just, I don't know if I'm not that well connected in Australia, so I have to add that. But I just don't have conversations like that when I'm here. Someone who really understands the leverage of a platform and really that it's a shaking up something that's has an old legacy and what the possibilities are out of the other end. You know, they're just thinking, oh, okay, there's banking. We're going to put banking online. It's still going to be the same, and it's just so much more than that because apps are kind of got to get almost emotional and experiential, not just utility based going forward.
Okay, there's a question here saying you mentioned customer experience and that it's a key element for your growth. What would the advice be if this area is lacking? What would be the first steps you take to try and rectify it?
Probably go get the customers, because focus groups are kind of crap because everybody they're not in buying mentality at that time, and they're just sort of telling you what you want to hear or telling each other what they want to hear, or there's social aspect that muddies the results a bit, I suppose. But really, I think if you really misfire, you've got to go find a bunch of people and probably hit them one-on-one, not put them in a group environment so much. Just get them to really. We're talking more about wandering through the funnel, I suppose. What are going to be now? We're sort of down to conversions and user experience stuff. But then I'd put in like an NPS rating system. You know that thing, how likely are you to recommend people to another? Yeah, Net Promoter Score. I'd put that in because then that'll quantify the customer experience. Yeah, because they're probably the two things. There's what's happening in the funnel, and then what happens if someone's not in the funnel and actually talking to a customer. And what are common complaints, but you can get good anecdotes just from like 10 interviews with people who are actually writing customer set. You can do all that in a week, really. Yeah.
A few final questions. This one, how do you balance policy concerns of machine learning in fintech? Machine learning can't necessarily predict the volatility of international markets.
Yeah.
Other elements.
I don't know. We're not in international markets, I suppose. But I mean, our machine learning is supposed to predict what an individual is, what is happening to an individual, and then you step back and you're looking at like how the portfolio performs.
Okay, so it's not as
well. Yeah, someone tried to pitch me something that predicted how whole cohorts move, and they were doing work for the Australian military a couple of months ago. And again, I just said, oh, well, we're using like 5,000 data points crunched in 11 seconds with 4% write-offs, including people, whether they capitalise their Christian name and all this sort of crazy shit. And so I don't know if you really need to know. Because, especially in the Australian context where we're not likely to have big unemployment or property, the macros are pretty stable. And in fact, if you're doing small loans and a lot of people will become unemployed, then they can't get a loan with us anyway. So that's kind of legislated for. Then if the volumes drop and there was widespread unemployment, then people who used to have jobs are probably pretty good payers anyway, in terms of affecting the overall portfolio if you were to change your rules a little bit to loosen them if there was double unemployment suddenly happening in 6 months. Yeah, I don't know, it's probably the best I can do with that one.
Okay. Culture, just quickly touching on this, I think this is an important element. Culture and lifestyle, Gold Coast, I know you spent a fair bit of time in Europe as well. What role has culture played in business for you, both for yourself and for your staff, I guess?
Yeah, I guess, a lot of people probably dismiss culture as just crap out of the HR textbook. or organisational theory and behaviour or whatever. But I just couldn't emphasise enough how important it is, and again it comes back to that anchoring what's the problem and how do we solve that problem really. So for us it's being a meritocracy, customer based, putting money second, and putting people first, and trying to take out the politics by measuring as much stuff as possible and being super objective. And so if behaviours are starting to be inconsistent with that, people are like, they need to share the high back in their own office and all this sort of link. That gets edited out. But you can't just have it as like a document on the wall or in induction. You have to actually, everybody has to police those 6 values. And if you just have a few dicks get into the mix, then it can start to just go in the wrong direction. So it has to just be really embodied and reinforced all the way through.
Can you tell us a few of those values or rules, or you just mentioned 6?
Yeah, I'm glad you
Just
asked.
testing me.
And I shouldn't have to look at my phone. But in my defence, and I just am starting, you know when you have and I'll use the lawnmower analogy again, right before the fuel runs out, like, and then it's gone. Right, I'm starting to get into that territory. For the first 45 minutes I was pretty good. Yeah, so it's all about the people. I mean, it sounds naff, but it actually, because we could make a lot more money if we were arseholes basically, but we're not. So we'd rather leave a lot of money on the table and do the right thing, to put it squarely. Number 2 is we get it done, so I just hate talking about stuff and then it's like, oh yeah, we had the same conversation 6 months ago, did we do it? Well, do it. Just, I can't stand, you know, having committees and just talking about stuff and just not taking action. You want action out of the back of the conversations. You do it or not, or it's shit, or it's put that on the long finger, it's lukewarm, put it over there. Crystal clear is really internal and external transparency. So I know in Australia HR laws mean you can't know what other people's salaries are, but ideally you shouldn't give a shit. You should know he's on this, he does this, his job's this. Even if you started yesterday or you've been there for 10 years, like, and you know, I just don't like back channels or power and information being confined to kind of some of that type of hierarchy. And then of course on the customer, you know, what you see is what you get. It's super clear and easy. And, you know, banks, apart from sloppy behaviour, make money by trying to kind of catch you out on things. We don't sit still. Probably don't have to go into that one anymore. It's just that we don't rest on our laurels and we're looking at the rearview mirror. We want to always just keep trying to get it better and better and better. We march to our own beat means we kind of don't care how it's been done before or what the traditions are. In fact, we probably want to go the other way. So it's kind of cool to be a bit eccentric. So if someone says, oh yeah, no, that's not how we do it, well, then that's actually like where that makes us go in the other direction. Facts over opinions, so yeah, just depoliticising the discussion by just having numbers there is always so much better. So I don't know, for us, if we actually do all those things, you can't really go too far wrong. And hiring including, you know, people have to actually know the stuff and solve problems, not just come from some brand name, because that's kind of bullshit as well. You know, they've actually got to have substance, not just it's what they know, not who. Yeah.
Great. You're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had a few businesses. Are you constantly looking for the next big thing?
I think the next big thing is within this thing, really. Yeah, definitely that using artificial intelligence to help people with their daily cash flow is pretty exciting actually. And then like it almost, I think anti-credit card is too strong a term, but that sort of thing. Let's say like a credit card with trainer wheels for like the 20, 30-year-old person who's got no credit data in their credit file, because we, unlike everybody else, do have the data and understand what that particular person can afford and how they're going to behave. Whereas if you're 20 and you have a credit card, that's all that some other potential credit provider can see in your credit file, so it's not really that much to go on. Like if we want to see someone out batting in the nets yesterday and see whether they should be in the pitch, not like, so it's like today's form, not just old shit data that's 2 years old, that sort of thing.
Great, that's exciting. Well,
if you're into it.
I think there's some great opportunities in that space, hasn't there?
Yeah, thanks. I didn't expect there's heaps of people actually. So thanks for surprised that so many people want to come listen to me. You probably noticed I started doing this over the last 15 minutes, but I made it. So thanks,
Well,
thanks
you.
a lot.
Really appreciate you coming, especially on after such a big trip. So please